An overview about the trending report, right? What a trending report is, what we can do with that. So in simple terms, this report allows us to report and analyze trended workers data like headcount attrition over a period of time, right?
Okay.
So basically, if you want to report a data for a specific period or a period of time, like if I want to look into the data from the year 2016 till today,
Okay.
then this trending data would help us to create a report and find the data for the past couple of years, as well as even if I wanted to do it by year and month, I can still do so with the help of this trending workers data. There is a
Okay.
configuration involved on the trended workers, which will allow us to decide for which period I wanted to run this trended workers task. So for
Okay.
example, some company would have implemented Workday during the year 2013 or 14, sometime during like that, right? So if you look into that, there are like 7+ years data we have in the system. So in that case, we can define that sometimes I might also look into the backdated analysis, like how the trend has gone. So the trend meaning, if I wanted to compare that with the share market or something, like you can also look into the gold prices or petrol prices, right? We are looking into the trend. People are trying to compare the data with the previous years, how it was during last year, how it was during current year, like that, right? So those are the trending. Those data can be achieved through the trended workers report,
Okay.
right? So I think now you will be able to connect what is the trending, right? So what is the trending data? So whenever we wanted to do some sort of analysis with the previous or a backdated data, then
Okay.
this trending workers would help us, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let us look into the demo report, which is headcount by here. So in organization point of view, everything, since it's an HCM, everything will be based on headcount, right?
Yes.
Everything will be based on worker related information. So I'm going to search this report called headcount by year, and then you can see it is populating data along with the facet search, right?
Yeah.
You can also add a facet search into it. So what I'm trying to see here is I wanted to look into the data comparison for the last 4 years. Being said that, I wanted to look into the number of actual headcount versus full-time employee.
Okay.
How many are the total number of headcount, out of which how many are full-time employee? So in this way, I can easily see there are two things I can see from here. One, the headcount is increasing. You can see from 2019 to 2020, there is a huge increase. Almost 1,400 plus employees has joined here,
Yes.
right? As well, there is a change in the FTE also. Not all the employees are full-time employees. In this case, there are 4 employees who are not full-time.
Yes.
So similarly, in this case, there are 4 employees again who are not full. So it keeps repeating, right?
Yeah.
So those are the comparison that we can do. So not only on the headcount, but also on the hires, leavers, transfers, etc. Right? So when I wanted to compare, so this comparison can also be made on the employee type as well. So we have 2 employee types. One is employee, the other one is contingent worker. So in Workday, contractors will be termed as contingent worker.
Okay.
So if I wanted to compare how many employees versus contingent worker, I can build a report using trended workers, and then I can show the data. So wherever the period falls in, wherever there is a period falls in, I would probably suggest to use the trended workers data.
Okay.
So in this case, so we can see there are so many employee types we have. So if I wanted to look into only regular employees, the moment when I filter, you can see the count changes and it only shows me regular employee information. So likewise, this facet. So these are some of the reports wherein the HR people or the analytics team would be interested to look into. right? Because mostly the analytical team and the HR team would be interested to see the trend analysis. They would like to do the trend analysis, like how many hires we had last year, how many terminations we had last year compared to this year, or over a period of like last 12 months. There is a term called 12 months rolling attrition. So whenever you run this report from that date, the last 12 months, we will be able to see the attrition percentage. So attrition, in simple terms, it's all terminations, voluntary terminations, right? How many voluntarily resigned from the organization? So those are called attritions. So the company would probably look into the attrition details. The reason is they wanted to know why the voluntary leave. I mean, why there are so many voluntary leavers that we have within the organization, and there can be further level analysis that can be done through, like whether how many top performers has left the organization, and then how many comp ratio issues that we have with the employees, and why people are leaving. So many criterias are there, so we can do those analysis with this report, right?
Yeah.
So let's look into the definition. So we have built a report using the report type trending. Let me also tell you something. So this data source, trended workers,
Mhm.
it's a it's you can see it's an index data source, which means this is a data source. So this data source can also be used in other report types, right? Trending is a report type wherein this is a data source. Wherever you see a
Okay.
data source, the data source can be used in any report types. You can also build a report, advanced report, using trended workers data source. You can also build a matrix report using trended workers data source. So this data source can be used in any report types because these are all standard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can look into that primary business object wherein which is associated with this trended workers data. So any fields that you want to bring in, that field should be associated with this primary business object. So I
Okay.
just clicked on that primary business object, and then if you look into the business object, this would probably give almost everything that are associated with that business object, like fields, RBO, related business object, data source, and reports that are using this data source, right? So this
Okay.
is one of the key, process that a report writer should follow, because if most of the cases they do not know whether that field would be available in this data source, or sometimes whether they wanted to know what relationship that they should use to bring that field in. So in this case, we have under this business object trended workers, we have 119 fields, right? It
Yeah.
depends between organization to organization. Sometimes there may be calculated fields also would be associated here. You can see some of the calculated fields also there. So these
Okay.
fields are not standard across organization, because as long as you start creating calculated fields, it will keep adding into this business object, because we are using this business object as the source to build the calculated fields.
Okay.
So that's where these field count might differ between organization to organization. However, you can still find that which are workday delivered and which are calculated field. So you can seal the field source, right? This will help us to identify that these are workday delivered fields. It's not a calculated fields created by an report writer or an administrator.
Okay.
Out of 119, we have 109 fields that are available. And the next one also, it's a field type. You can look into what this field provides. If it says Boolean, it's a true or false condition. If it says single instance, so this will provide a single line for each employee, right? A single instance. And then this dollar symbol would probably say it's a currency field.
Currency.
Yeah, and then similarly we have text field. You can see there is a text field.
Mhm.
Likewise, we have multiple field type, like numeric. If there is a hash symbol, it's a numeric, and then if it's a calendar symbol, then it's a date. So these are multiple types that we have, and there is a multi instance as well. That also we will be able to see that based on the field type. And then the related business object. So this is something, it's a common one. It's not only related to trended workers, right? This is part of workday terminology session, right? This is not specific to trended. This method can be applied across all data sources and business object that we have. Right? This is not just related to trended workers. You can also look into business object of worker or any other field as well to get in detail and to see whether if it is possible or not. The possible, what I'm saying is, if you wanted to bring in a connection between two business objects, then you can look into this, right? So what it says is this related business object will help us to see whether if there is a link to related business object, like from this business object, can we link to another business object? Meaning, so let's take this as an example. So this abstract review rating is a related business object. So you can also get in detail about abstract related. I mean, you can create a calc field with abstract review rating business object, and then you can try to bring in the fields that are associated with trended workers. All these fields that we have seen on the first step. Because some cases there we discuss about the parent and the child relationship, right? So the parent would be the primary business object, child would be the related business object. So in this case, if I wanted to look into details about child, and then I can bring it from this relationship. So you should look into the business object that are associated. See, even though the primary object is trended workers, we can also use these business object when we are building reports on these business object to get the trended workers information. Most of the cases worker would be there, so worker will be acting as a single point of contact for most of the data that we wanted to build, right? So when we say worker, how we have to get into this, right? Trended worker is actually having a relationship. So suppose in trended workers, you will not find a when you are building a report with a trended workers business object, you will not find a manager field, because this manager has a related object called worker. So if you wanted to look into the manager information, right? So we only have a direct field called manager under trended workers, but I wanted to know manager's location, manager country, manager's manager. So those information, if I wanted to know, what I can do is I can get into the relation object, and then I get into the manager and then pull those information through a calculated field. So these are links to related business object, and these are links from related business object. Maybe you can also connect from other business object to this business object. So these are all the parent and the child relationship. So there are no connections that can be done from other business object that to trended workers. That's why we are not seeing any data. If we look into the other business object like worker or something, then you will also find a relationship as well. And then this is the data source. What this data source is all about. So access worker as its primary object and returns multiple rows of activity and snapshot data per worker. So you can see activity and snapshot is one of the key word that we should remember on trended workers. The reason is everything that happens as an changes on the worker profile will be considered as an activity. Everything that happens as a one time will be considered as a snapshot. For example, two things we cannot change. One is hire and termination. That will happen only once.
Yes.
So if I wanted to look into that, then it's a snapshot.
Okay.
It's a snapshot data. Like headcount will be considered as a snapshot. Hires, terminations we can still consider. So activity meaning any worker transactions that happens, job history, right? Transfers, salary change, position change, supervisory organization change, and then cost center change, location change, country change. All those changes that we see it on the worker job history will be under the activity section.
Okay.
So let us see how to find those job history. So if you get into the job, you will find worker history. So I'm going to find out all the transactions that happened on the worker profile. See, there are so many things like time off, leave request, one-time payment, manager change, job interest, personal information change, benefits change, compensation change, transfer happened, and then so you can see there are so many transactions that happened, like bonus paid, right, on worker history. So these are all these things will happen repeatedly, like every year it might happen, or every over a period of time it will happen. So those will be considered as the activity. If we wanted to look into a snapshot data, which means as of date head count, I wanted to look into the date as of today, I wanted to look into the head count. Those things we have to use snapshot. So we will look into the activity and snapshot while we get into the report definition. And it will also help us to give data for the last 36 months and refresh it in the background at regular intervals. So we can run it for like 3 years, last 3 years data, and we can also schedule that. It will automatically run during regular intervals as well. So that is the trended workers task that we have. So it keeps refreshing the data. Whenever you move to the next year, it will still look into the last 3 years data. And then it will also prompt the organization and more filters to report results, or related objects are reported at the record date. So so all these data, right, all the data that we are seeing on the trended workers will be based on the record date.
Okay.
This is one of the key thing that we should note. And then for operational purpose on workers that is not rendered, you can use worker for HCM reporting or other report data source. So if you are looking into a different aspect of creating a report, then you can use this worker for HCM, which is also an index data source, or any other report types. And then finally, the report tabs. See, again, this view business object is a task. You can look into any of the business object to see these things into it, right?
Okay. So, Krishna, how often will we use trending reports?
See, it purely depends on the company's requirement. When they wanted to look into a trend analysis, I wanted to see the data for the last 3 years. I wanted to know the hires during the last 12 months.
Mhm.
So those are the scenarios wherein we can build trending reports. So difference between trending and matrix is matrix will show data as of date. That will be only one single data. But when you use trending, it will help us to see the last 12 months data in the single screen.
Okay.
So the shortcut for finding business object, the prefix that we should use BO. Worker data is huge, so that's why it's taking some time to load.
Okay. But worker data is indexed, right?
Not all the fields are indexed.
Okay.
So now we are seeing, so similar way for trended workers, we have fields business object data source for workers. So this will be applicable for other business object as well, right? Position, job profile, etc. So wherever you see a business object which are associated to the data source, and if you wanted to look into the fields whether if that business object would provide, then you can look into the view business object. And you can see there are around 6,000 plus fields that are associated, that includes both calculated and workday delivered.
Okay.
Similarly, you can also see related business. So in this way, in this object, you can see the links from the related business object. So since we have seen trended workers here that says worker, and these are the two fields that you can go in detail. So we have to see whether if we are able to see that here. see, we can see the trended workers links here.
Yeah.
The two fields. So what it says is this is links to RBO. This is links
Okay.
from RBO, right? So you can create links. So there should be a common, there should be a link between the business object to get fields from that object. If you do
Yeah.
not have any link, if you do not find any link, then it is not possible to build report. So first thing, if you are unable to achieve certain data out of a related business object, you have to go in detail about this view business object and see if there is a link already existing. If not, you can also try a different way to create that link, right? Like you whatever you data. So for example, in a case, you might see there is a link to trended workers from this report, but wherein if you wanted to get into the manager one, from here you can get into manager and then you can again create a link from there. So it's all depends on the report writer to create multiple links, but
How
you
do we
cannot create.
create a link? Like, will we have that topic later? Or?
No, so there is no such topic about this. It's based on the practice. So even Workday do not provide this details. They only say there is a link and there is a link from. So it's based on the practice and experience. You will get to know how to create those links. But in simple terms, this link is probably a connection between two data sets, right? So let me try to show you something. So let's take A, B, and C, right? There is a link between A and B. So in both the ways, you can use, like you can also go from A to B, or you can do vice versa. You can do from B to A also. But your requirement is to get data from C, wherein there is no link from A to C, right? There is no link from A to C. So, but what we can do is we know that there is a link between B and C. We know there is a link between B and C, but there is no direct link from A to C, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we can now do is, as a report writer, we can find a way. So I'm saying it in a simple terms. It majorly depends on the business object, right? So now I need to find out what is that one link that will help me to connect to the other. So what is that one link which I have from A, and that will help me to connect to C. So now I found that there is a link between A and B. So B already has a link with C. So in which means I can directly get into B and then go to C to get data from it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are some of
Yeah.
the
I did understand this concept where even though there is no direct link from object A and C, we can just go through some other alternative and get data because it has an access with B. So I got the overall point of this topic, but I'm just asking if we are about to create a link, how do we do that? Like at least an overview. Where
oh
do
yeah,
we
so
go?
it's so the link is nothing but the calculated fields, right?
Okay.
So what we are doing here is, so let me show you some sample example. So see, in this case, I have a manager field here from trended workers.
Okay.
So let's say if I wanted to get the hire count, so trended worker has a field called hire count. So from worker, I cannot get the hire count. So what I have to do is I have to find out which business object would give me an hire count information.
Okay.
So in that case, what I will do, I will search the links from a different business object, which would probably help me to get a higher count. Before that, I have to see on the fields from the trended work, I mean, which field is available in which data source. So here let me search for hire count. First I should understand whether in which business object I have this hire count.
Yeah.
So you can see that trended workers thus provide me an hire count information, right? So now I know somehow from worker I have to connect to this trended workers business object, and you can see the business object is trended workers, but you could not see there is no relationship, there is no related business object for this field because it's a custom field. In this case, what I have to do, I have to first go ahead and look into trended workers, connect, meaning I have to create a calculated field, lookup related value, and get this trended workers as the object because there is already a link from worker, and then I can get the hire count. Okay, since you asked, let me show you a quick calc field sample.
Yeah.
See, calculated field is one of the most important thing a report writer should know, because without calculated field, it would be very difficult for us to connect data or get data from a different data sets, right?
Yes.
So I'm saying hire count from trended. So lookup related value is VLOOKUP in Excel. So lookup field I'm saying, so since it's a business object, I have to see whether if I can get that as a field. So I can only connect to any of the fields in the business object. I cannot connect. So let me tell you what. So here I can see links from, right? So I have to either use manager or worker to get that link. So you cannot you can only connect the business object field which are associated. You cannot connect directly to the business object itself. Like you cannot add a trended workers as a field because that is a business object. That is not a field. So you have to look into the field associated with that business object.
Either manager or worker.
Yes, we have to use either manager or worker. If I get into the manager, but again there is a challenge. Here I will, in this case, I will not be able to get the trended workers hire count details because it doesn't have any relation object. It only has a trended workers business object. So if I wanted to get into that, then I have to convert this into a trended workers. I mean the business object, I have to change it to trended workers.
Okay.
So this naming is most important. Whatever you're trying to achieve, you have to put it over there so that it would be easy for us to know what field it is.
Okay.
So you can also look into the lookup field that we have with the trended workers object. So you can see there are so many things that we have within trended workers, right? So I have to find a link. So if I wanted to, so now I'm creating a link from trended workers. So I wanted to get into worker. So here I do not have a compensation grade field. So in trended workers, let's see if we can find any fields that are not available, and whether we can create a calc field to bring that one. So we have compensation grade, but we so there is no job title field. You can see there is no job title field in trended workers, right?
Yes.
So what we have to do is we can create a calc field from trended workers and then get into worker, and then we can pull the job title. So if I do so, now I have created that, right?
Yes.
So let's see whether if we are able to find that this field. I should change this name. Let me change it to job title. So we are not looking into the higher count because it's a direct field. So I'm trying to create a relationship, right? So I've changed this to job title. See, we found that field.
Yeah.
It's a calculated field. So let's see whether if that is coming under relation object. So I think since it's a testing generated, it's not updating, but in a real scenario, you will see that this field will appear on the relationship so that you can use that field also to create that relationship.
Okay.
So normally this would appear. So I think since it's a testing generated, there are some limitations, I think. So, but in real life, you can see that these things would appear as a relationship so that you will also be able to report it on that.
Okay.
So what I'm saying here is, so rather than 2, we are seeing there is a this would probably take more time because it's a big business object. So what I was trying to say is on this links, right? You are seeing the count number of links. So this will also be added into it. This calculated also we have created a link, right? So this will
Yes.
also be added as a
Yes.
link. So that's how we have to start creating the link
Okay.
so that you can get data out of it, right? So yeah, so let it take time and then we'll see. But in the meanwhile, let's get into the definition of trended workers. So once we are defining the trended workers, you can see the tabs are so I mean always the first few tabs would change, not all remaining the rest of the few, like advanced share output prompts would be there in most of the field report types. So when it says trending, we have to define, it's mostly similar to matrix report, like either rows and columns, right? So in this case, we are actually defining the time period, which is a row. You can see this is a row. You can also change it to columns while designing the report, and then you are saying that group by here, right? I wanted to group this data by year. That's what we have seen there, right? It shows 2018, 19, 20 data while I ran the report, and then I'm saying that I want so it up to as optional. Again, it's similar to matrix report. Column is optional, and then you can say I wanted to sum the ending account as well as I wanted to sum the FT. So whatever data that we have provided here, we are seeing that on the output tab. And this data detail override, it's one of the key thing wherein the report writer can have the ability to change the fields that are displayed on the data. Like these are the, so when you click on that count, right, it will take us to the detailed data. So these are the fields that we'll be seeing when I click on that count.
Okay.
Right? So like worker, employee. So we will be having access to edit these fields. So you can do an edit and then you can add a couple of additional fields into it, right? You can also edit the detailed data overview and then you can change the way. So sometimes the report writer will get confused because there is an option called drill down. If you go to the drill down, you can also define which fields you wanted to do a drill down. There is a detailed data as well. But whatever detailed data that we update here, it will not be shown on the report output. For example, see in this case there are 9, so both are same, right? Both are same. But if I am adding any additional data field here, when I run the report, it will not be displayed. The reason is this is hard coded with detailed data override, which means it will only look into the data that are appearing here, that are the fields that are mentioned here. Are you able to follow?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's just a
so
little bit confusing. That's it.
okay, let me do an example. See, these are all some of the these are all not typically written on a learning document, right?
Okay.
So these are all based on the experience that you have faced some challenges, and when you try to identify why you are getting those challenges, then you can probably find a solution. So these are all some of the tips and tricks that you can follow. So
Okay.
because the challenges mostly report writer would face would be like why the data is not appearing even though I have a field in the report, why it's not showing up, right? Why the calculated field is not working as expected, why I am unable to add fields into the report. Those are all some of the challenges that report writer might face, right?
Yes.
So when I say the first one, why this detailed data is not appearing, so let me first two things. Let me add a field here which is not available. So you can see there are 9 fields, right? Compensation, grades, location. Let me also add a field for country. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm saying location, country. I've added a new field here. Now it's 10.
Okay.
Okay. I'm saying okay. So once again, I'm confirming that we have 10 fields here. I have added location, right? Country. But here on the detailed, fresh. See, you can see there are only 9. In the detailed data override, we do not see that location, country, whatever we have added it on the report, right?
Yes.
So now I am going to click any of the count to see the detailed data. So this is what the detailed data is called as, right?
Yeah.
Now you are able to see that location, country that we have added, it's not showing up, right? See, I have added it on the report, right? I have added it on the report definition, the detailed data, but I am unable to see that count here.
Yes.
Sorry, that field here.
Field here.
So we might be worried why it's not showing up, even though I have added it on the report definition, why it's not showing up. So these are some of the day-to-day challenges that the report writer might face. So in that case, we have to make sure that there is no detailed data override. What it says, right? The simple term, detailed data override, meaning this is a detailed data. Whatever we see here, it's termed as detailed data.
Yes.
We are actually overriding this. We are actually trying to override this data with a new data. This can be used across other reports, right?
Okay.
Now, let me add that same field here. Even though if I'm not going to add that field in the detail data, let's say let ignore all these fields, right? I'm going to remove all these fields. There is no data here. There is no detailed data mentioned here, but I have detailed data overridden. Now I am going to add this country here. See, again, this method can be applied across all reports like matrix and trended, not just in trended, right?
Okay.
These are all some of the common methods that we can follow. Now I added the country. Let me again refresh it. I think probably I should refresh the report. Let me refresh the report again, or else I think it should be updated. Let's see. See, location, country.
Country. Yeah.
So now it has come. So these are some of the day-to-day challenges that report writer might face. Again, this can be used across other reports as well, not just trended. So wherever you see the detailed data override, you have to be cautious that okay, this detailed data, whatever I mentioned it on the report definition, drill down option or the detailed data tab, it will be overridden with the new data. So we have to get into that detailed data override, and then we have to change those fields or add those fields here. Or in other terms, let's say that if you wanted to, so these fields are already added. So see, most of the cases you will not be adding this detailed data override. This is an association that it has with the field itself. So automatically it will get added. So you will not have that control over that, right? So it's this detailed data override option. It's not something you will be adding it. Based on the field, it will automatically be added.
Okay.
So in that case, you have to modify these fields here. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the detailed data override, and then let's look into the drill down option. Similarly, whatever we do it on the matrix report, we can do the same sort of drillable options. Like if I wanted to see, like if you click on the small drop down, or if I wanted to see by country, then you can see that I'm able to see this data by country.
Okay.
And again, if I wanted to do a further drill down, like how many employees and contingent workers in that country, then you can see that. So there are multiple level of drill downs that we can do. See, from this also, from United Kingdom, I wanted to see the gender. Who are these four? So you can see there are 2 males. So likewise, you can keep going in see detail to find the drillable data, right? This is one of the key feature that Workday has. And then let's look into, so we have added the detail and we have seen that overridden, and then let's look into the filter. So what we discussed on the definition, right? Two things. One is activity and then snapshot. Here I wanted to know only the head count. You can see it's a head count. Head count will definitely be a snapshot. Okay, it will be, I want to know a data as of a specific date. Most of the cases, report writer would get confused with the snapshot and activity. When to use snapshot, when to use activity. In simple terms, snapshot is where you find any data as of a specific date, like a head count, right? In that way, you have to use snapshot. If you want to look into a transfer from one region to another, one country to another, one organization to another, then you will use an activity, because there will be multiple transactions that happens during a specific period of time. Like in a year 2020, employee A might have moved from China to Japan during the month of Jan. Again, during the month of April, he moved from Japan to US. And then during the month of July, he moved from US to UK. So in the same year, there are 3 different movements that he has done. So in that case, if you look into the snapshot, it will only say that he is currently with UK. It will not show the transactions that he moved from China to Japan, Japan to US, US to UK. So that way you have to use activity. Whenever you see a movement or transfers, there will be an activity involved, right? For those you have to use activity rather than snapshot. So now what I've defined is I want to know only headcount, employee, because it's an FTE. I'm only looking into the FTE data, right? Yeah. Here I'm saying that I want to look into the FTE, who are all full-time, who are all part-time when they are employees. I don't want to look into the contingent worker data. So that's where I mentioned these. So these are all considered as hard code filtered. Whenever, whatever filter that you are mentioning out on the filter field, filter tab, those are called as hard code filter. So as a report writer, I would probably suggest to give the filter as a prompt, which would probably help us to get the report even more faster. The reason is, when you give a filter, it will take more time to run, because these are all hard code. When you give it as a prompt, from the table level itself, the report will get drilled and then it will show the data even more faster. Okay, so it's better practice to give more prompts rather than you have to convert the filter into prompts. That's a simple technique to make the report even more run faster. So you can see in the prompts. So why we are seeing so many prompts? We have given only 2. The reason is these are all. Do you remember what these prompts are? These prompts are built-in prompts. That are associated with this data source. Right? There are certain built-in prompts that we have, which are associated with this data source itself, which you cannot remove. So by default, rendered workers will have the start date, end date, all those things. So we have given the record date here, right? So record date will have a couple of fields associated with this. So when we say record date, I wanted to see, so these fields like start date, end date, remove, active, all these are associated with this data source, built-in prompts. So that's why we are seeing up here, and we are saying we are also setting an period like 3 years ago, last day of this month. And then if I wanted to exclude from headcount active, those are some of the prompts that we have. We can probably drill down the data accordingly. And then output we have mentioned as chart and table. And then so we have also added the facet filter. So we were able to do a filter, right? On the left side we have seen that facet filter. So only if you add those on the advanced tab you can use, provided the data source should be, if you want to use a facet filter, then the data source should be indexed. Okay, so shall we try creating a new report?
Yeah.
See, if I am going to teach you more of a theoretical one like Workday does, then it would be difficult for a report writer to understand. So whatever scenarios that I have faced, during my experience or something like that, then I'm sharing those instances with you, like this
Okay.
detailed data or any sort of tips and tricks that I am sharing it with you. It will be
Yeah.
purely based on my experience. It's not based on the Workday or the tool that they have mentioned.
Okay.
So that's why whatever I'm going to show you, it's all prepared by me. So
Mm-hmm.
whichever would be useful for the trainer, I mean the candidate who are attending. So let us try to build a report that should give us the head count. Let us name it as a scorecard. Scorecard trending. I'm using the report type as trending, and the data source I'm going to use as trended. Okay. So now the time field will automatically pick the record date, because whatever data that we wanted to show over a period of time, this is a field that we should use, the record date, similar to effective date, right? This date is associated with the worker's trending instance. So we have a trending instance. So this date will work based on that. I'm going to say that I wanted to see this data by year and or year month or year quarter. So since we have seen that demo report as year, let's make it as year month.
Okay.
I can also rename this year month to a different name also based on the company's requirement, right? And you can also make this as a column, or you can also make it as a row. Okay. Now I'm making it as a row so that it will probably show me on the y-axis or x-axis based on the requirement that I have. Finally, this is the place where we summarize the data. So now I will add the sum, and then I'm going to search for the fields. So count will actually only count the total number of employees in that, right? That's a head count, right? Now
Yeah.
I'm going to see a scorecard. The scorecard definition would be hires, leavers. When I say leavers, both voluntary and involuntary, and then closing head count, right? These are all some of the information that we can show it on the scorecard. So now
Okay.
I'm going to add a hire count. So this will give me the total number of hires in that period. Again, I'm going to add another sum, and then I'm going to add voluntary termination count. Again, I'm going to add another sum, so I'm going to add involuntary termination count. Finally, I'm going to say ending count. What is the closing head count? I'm not going to add any drill down data because we have seen that on the demo. Let's see the filter. So anyway, I can filter those worker type or something in the prompt itself, right? Because it has a default prompt.
Yeah.
So when you do not know what all the default, you can click this checkbox. It will display all the default prompts.
Okay.
Okay. So you can see that, there will always be a challenge for report writer because you will see the end date first and then the start date second. We have an habit of entering the from and to date, right? So
Yes.
by default, we will put it as a reverse, then the report will not run. So we have to be cautious that we have to interchange this. Again, these are all based on the experience, right? This will not be there in any document.
Yes.
So I just interchanged and then I'm going to run this. Okay, while running it, I will just add those prompts into it. So let me, this testing tenant will take more time actually
Yeah.
compared to the regular
There are
tenant.
lots of
So yeah, one more challenge you will see here. See, this is in US date format, month, date, and year.
Yeah.
But I think this user is configured like that, right?
Yes.
If they are going to configure you, then they will mention it as India time start date, so that you can probably use that. Let me put like 19. I will put then 12/31, 2020. So we are able to see the scorecard now. Like this month, there are 20 hires, no leavers. Total headcount is 357 as of 31st Jan 2019.
Okay.
Similarly, for Feb, we have one headcount. You can see 357 plus 1, 358. Likewise, it keeps adding. There are no changes. There are no hires until August. And then we have seen there is a hire, 3 hires. So you can see the count also changes. I haven't added the transfer data. Suppose if the count doesn't match, then it might be because of the transfers if you're showing it different organization. Since we are running it for the entire org, there won't be any changes as such. So whatever you do, so here 361 plus 89 minus 13 would give you 433.
Okay.
So these are all some of the analysis that you can with the help of trending data source. So let me quickly show you the how to configure. So see, this one would be configured by Workday themselves mostly. Okay, if not, you can also do so. There is a task called maintain trended workers. This is a task, right?
Okay.
So only if you enable this, then only you can create a trended report. If
So
it is
this
not
maintain
enabled,
project workers task is also available in real time.
sorry,
This maintain tender worker task is also available in real time or in just in the testing environment.
no, this is there in the real time.
Okay.
This is one of the key thing which will enable the trended workers. If it is not enabled, then you will not be able to create any of the trending data. This is
Okay.
mandate. Most companies do not use this. They will not enable this. So
Okay.
whenever there is a requirement and the report writer understands, okay, I have to use trending data, then you have to probably enable this.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see. You have this has been enabled, and the trending period is year and month by default, right?
Mhm.
And then there is a task which says refresh or something. So the trended workers keeps running automatically, so that it gets refresh. It gets the data refresh.
Yeah.
It keeps, so if I say 3 months, 3 years, all those things, right? So it will automatically get refreshed, and you can see the status also completed. Okay, and then configuration is one of the key thing. This is what the report writer should be aware of. So I'm saying that I want, so let's say, what is the definition of the start date? Specifies the earliest date that worker trending data will be captured for. Note that worker trending tracks the last 36 period of worker data or worker data that occurred on or after this date, whichever results in fewer periods. So these are the date which gives us like the last 3 years data. And on the retroactive period, so I'm saying that from this date, start capturing the trended data. So even if I run it for 2017 or such, I will not get the accurate data because I have mentioned as 1st of Feb 2018, right? So this from this date only you can do the trending analysis. And again, here the number of retroactive periods is, it says a historical period. How many periods that you want? I'm saying it's 3 year. I mentioned it as 3, which is a 3 period, which is 3 years. You can read the definition as well, which would say specifies the number of historical periods up to 3 that are regularly recalculated for worker trending to capture late paperwork, like business process events that are effective prior to the current trending period. That also you can use, like basically business process trendings, right? Like
Mhm.
last 3 years I want to see, so those things you can use. And by default, so you are seeing that year, month, year, how it has come is from the trending period. You can change it to year or fiscal period. So you can also define a fiscal period. Some companies use Jan to December, some companies use March to April, April to March. So those things you can configure on your own based on the company, because by default it will be like a calendar year from Jan to December. Okay, based on the company's the fiscal year or the financial year, you can alter modify this as well. You can create a custom one as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there are other two options, like include terminations on period end date. So if there is a termination falls on 31st of Jan 2020, and if you are running a report as on 31st Jan, we should say whether if they are terminated, they should be included as, even if during the last day. Some companies do consider the terminations that falls on the last day of the report run date. So for instance, here we are trying to run this report for a specific period, right? I have mentioned as 31st Jan 2020.
Yeah.
31st December 2020.
20.
So anyone so we have to consider the headcount until 31st December 2020. So an employee who might have been terminated and his last day is 31st December, then we should also
And
consider
also
that employee.
include. Yeah.
So only if you checkbox this, they will be included. Otherwise, they will be considered as a termination.
Okay.
So it depends. Again, it depends on the organization what data they wanted to see.
Okay.
And use international assignments as primary position for attended. You can just, so if there is an international assignment, then you can use the primary position, because the primary position will be different from the international assignment position. So in that case, if you wanted to use only the primary position, you can checkbox this. It will automatically calculate the primary position for that.
Okay.
So these are all some of the process that runs background, and that would help the rendered workers data to look accurate. Okay, and then organizations, you can add a couple of organizations that you wanted to define, only a few organizations for the trending data, not all the global organizations. Like let's take, if I wanted to run it for the entire organization, the global organization, I don't need to enter anything here. Or if I wanted to specify a single organization, only for that organization I need the trending data, you can go and add those organizations, and then who is the top level organization, that, and then you can add. So this will only run for that specific organization. Likewise, you can add maximum of 10 organization types in this worker report field, right?
Okay.
And additional fields are some of the things that you can use for last top 5 trending, all those things like that. It's a similar workday fields that we use. So you can these will be automatically configured. I would normally suggest not to add any of this data here until it is required. So mostly these two will be used only if there is a requirement. If you wanted to do it for any specific things, otherwise we are good with status and configuration. Status is just to see when this process has completed, how long it has taken.
Yeah.
And what is the total number of records is processed. And then configuration is one of the key thing wherein you have to define what data should be trended.
10. Okay.
So this is a task. Mostly report writer at the beginning, they may not have access. You can seek access by reaching out the security or changing the security into it, right?
Okay.
Yep. So that's about trending report. Right.
Okay.
So I think we are already over time. So let me know if you have any questions. Okay. So tomorrow we will be seeing a couple of advanced, more advanced report, like composite something.
Okay.
So again, if you are feeling that I'm going in a fast pace, please let me know. Some of the
Sure.
things, the reason why I'm going fast is all definitions. So that's why I'm going fast. Otherwise, if it is more of a technical stuff, I'll go with a slow phase.
Okay.
So let me know, and happy reporting and happy Monday.
Thank you. Have a good day.